And welcome to Kol Shira in partnership with Breslov.org and of course Yeshiva Torah Shimon. Parshat Mishpatim. Also it's Shabbos Shkolim. It's also Shabbos Mevarchim. Right? Wow, it's exciting. A very exciting Shabbos. Very exciting Shabbos. Baruch Hashem. And there's so much to learn about. There's so much to understand. So we're gonna do an overview of the parsha as we always do, but I just really want to start today with two short lessons that I put together from Likutey Moharan on the parsha. The first lesson we're going to do is based on lesson 7, okay? Based on lesson 7 in Likutey Moharan. I thought that was very nice because we are learning with Rav Chaim, he should be well, Torah 5. We are learning in Likutey Halachas, Hilchas HaPeirus, that's based on lesson number 6. So then I said, wait, look at this, and 7 fits into the parsha, and Shabbos is 7, so here we go. So look, it says like this. Ve'ila hamishpatim asher tosim lifneim. And these are the laws that I place in front of you. Okay? Ordinances, judgments, laws, different ways you can understand the word, which is all set before them. Okay. The main concept Rabbi Nachman talks about in lesson 7 is this idea of Beirur Hamidameh. We have to clarify our imagination. Now, we've had many lessons on imagination, but imagination is a very important thing. It's perhaps the most powerful thing that we have. Imagination is what drives a person, right? No matter what, whether the person wants to do something good, so he imagines how close he'll be to Hashem. He imagines how close he'll be to Klal Yisrael, how close he'll be to Eretz Yisrael, and it drives him to get closer. That's imagination. Sometimes the person has the imagination on the other side, and it can draw the person to very dark things, and things that don't have positive energy, that have negative energy. Right? Now, it's all based on the Midamah. And Rabbi Nachman says the primary spiritual struggle that a person has is actually with his Midamah, with the imagination. It's the source of confusion. It's the source of fear. It's the source of feeling hidden from Hashem. A person imagines he's far from Hashem. It's the imagination. But the Rebbe says, Mishpat, when you take judgment and you adjudicate, is the tool that you can use to clarify the mind. Okay, got it? Let's hear. Now watch how this works. The Rebbe says these are the words in Likutey Moharan. Ikra hamishpat hu beira hamedameh. The main judgment that you can have is clarifying the medameh. Ki al yedei hamishpat, through judgment, mevorin hamedameh min haseichel. You can clarify what is your seichel, what is your mind, your knowledge, and what is imagination. And that's how a person can achieve true emunah. Again, the imagination, most of the time, is what's drawing the person away from Hashem. So when you use mishpat and the seichel in the mind, you can then draw yourself closest to have emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what's the result? When the mind is clarified, you merit to have ha'aretz upon him. You have an illumination of the face, illumination. The word lifneihem also can be read to their faces. Lifneihem, their faces. This means through justice, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, His presence can become visible in every aspect of your life. In every aspect of our lives, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you imagine that you can be close to Hashem, why? Let me tell you how easy it is. Every person has an neshama. We all know that and believe that. What separates a person? What makes a person? What gives a person life? What gives a person vitality? It's his neshama. If the neshama leaves the guf, what's the body? You can have the strongest person in the world, the tallest, the most handsome person, the most beautiful woman. It doesn't matter. The most beautiful person. Take away the neshama, it's a dormant body. It's useless. It's useless. So when you realize that, wait a second, that means HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts a neshama inside of me, which is a chelik elikami mal, which is a part of God that's inside of me. Why should I stay distant from Hashem? So hence, the Torah says in this week's Parshat Mishpatim lifneihem. It can also be lipanim, your face. You'll have a clarity of the Rabbeinu Shalom lifneihem, which is the clarity that you'll have. That's one lesson that we have in Likutey Moharan. That's such a beautiful, beautiful lesson to understand the power of our imagination. How deep and strong the power of imagination can be in the positive, and chas v'sholom it can go in the negative. We always want to focus on the positive. Okay, now, let's move along now to lesson 10. Lesson 10, we were just talking about judgment, right? So the Rebbe says, what do you do to sweeten judgment? A person has din in their life, right? We're learning in Likutey Moharan 5, lesson 5. How do you determine when you pray, if you're before the judgment or after the judgment? How do you know? And then the Rebbe says over there, based on how much simcha you put in to your davening. If you can be malei simcha, then you know that it's before a judgment. But let's say you don't have the malei. Let's say you want to have simcha, but you're not just finding that joy. What do you do? What do you do? Listen to this. Ve'ila Mishpatim. And these are the ordinances. The main concept of Hamtokat Hadinim, to sweeten judgment, to mitigate judgment. That's what lesson 10 focuses on how to transform dinim. How do I transform judgment, harsh decrees, anxiety, or suffering into rachamim, into mercy? How do I do that? The Rebbe says through Mishpatim. And he says it goes through Ruach. Ruach. Ruach is spirit, wind, Ruach. And the Rebbe says like this, and listen to this is so amazing. He says, these are his words. Al yedei rikudin umachamas. Mechamas, kaf al kaf. Through dancing and clapping one's hands. Dancing and clapping one's hands. Naseh hamtokas hadinim, that makes a sweetening of judgment. How beautiful is that? That's why we have in Breslov, we have a beautiful custom every day. After we finish davening in the morning, and after every tefillah actually, we have a rikud. We have a little dance. We dance, which means you move your feet, which means you clap. When you move your feet and you clap, what you're doing is you're actually sweetening judgment. It's amazing. Now, how does that work? He says, Ki ha-mishpatim hein bechinas ruach. Because mishpatim, judgment, is ruach. V'ayidei ha-ruach nimtokim hagava. And through a person using ruach. Now, if you take your hands and put your hands together, and you put your hands together and clap, you'll notice that there's air that comes out. If you clap your hands, you move your hands together, you notice that there's some kind of air, you can feel it on your face. The Rebbe says that air is the air of Eretz Yisrael. That's hamtokas adinim. Through dancing and clapping one's hand, the sweetening of judgment is achieved. For the judgment are the aspect of Ruach spirit, and through the spirit pride is rectified. The spiritual result, clapping, join the two hands, right, mercy, left, judgment. Your two hands, your right hand is chesed, the left hand is judgment. Take the two to put them together. Put them together sweetens the severity of the decree. If you take your right hand and put it on your left hand, it's the same like we learned when you take your challah. You take your bread and you dip your bread into the salt. It's mitigating the judgment. Take your right hand, clap it towards your left hand, and that is also mitigating judgment. How beautiful is that? Unbelievable. Then he says, dancing. Lifting the feet off the ground breaks the connection to earthly pride and material worries. When you dance, you lift your feet up. When I lift my feet up, I'm in the airspace. I'm not on the ground. That means I can disconnect myself from the material worries, allowing the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Ruach, to enter my heart. So here's two beautiful ideas. Of this idea when the spirit, when you let the Ruach is balanced and humble, and you are no longer subject to the harsh judgments, you exit in a state of peace and joy. Don't we all want to be in a state of peace and joy? So we learned two beautiful lessons here based on lesson 7. When I do my judgment, and I can clarify my imagination. I have my imagination that drives me crazy. And what do? I use judgment. And I use my seichel. And I remember that there's a chelik elikami mal inside of me, and I want to get closer to Hashem. And what's the way to do that best? Clap your hands. Take your left hand, put your left hand on your right hand. Right? No, the right hand on the left hand. The right hand on the left hand. The same way you take the challah, which is the chesed, and you put it on the left hand onto the salt. That's the din. That's what we're doing over here. So we'll do a beautiful system to change a person's ideals in his life, and to give the person the right perspective in life. This is what the Torah is teaching us on Mishpatim. Now that's the lesson that we have from Rabbi Nachman, but I love to look at the Midrash on the parsha, and one of my favorite avenues to look at on the Midrash is the Likutey Moharan. Okay, the Likutey Moharan is just an amazing compilation of different midrashim, and the way he puts it together, it's just a masterpiece. So he says like this. In this week's parsha, in Perek Chav Gimel 23 and verse 5, it says, "If you see the donkey of your enemy lying down its burden and would refrain from helping him, you surely help him. You should surely help with him. Azoiv tazoiv imay." That's what the Torah says. Azoiv tazoiv imay. Interesting. Let's understand something. Why does the Torah even mention an enemy? Are you allowed to have an enemy? We're talking about a Jew. Is a Jew allowed to hate a Jew? It says, Lo sisna sachicha b'bovecha. But the Rambam says that if you have a Jew that's a willful sinner and doesn't do tshuva, it's a mitzvah to hate that person. Again, don't hate the person. I would like to say, hate the person's actions. Hate the actions. Separate the person from the actions. I may not like the actions, but I love the person. The person's wonderful. The person is absolutely wonderful. There was a story where the Rebbe Rashab in Lubavitch had a very important, wealthy man that came to have a yechidus with the Rebbe. And he was waiting there, and then the next thing he sees, he's on the line to go in to see the Rebbe, and he sees this other guy. He sees this other guy that doesn't look very distinguished at all. He sees the Rebbe takes him in. And he's like, wait a second, I'm here. What happened? Listen to this. So the Rebbe finishes with this man, and he calls the Gvir in. And he speaks with the Gvir. And he tells the Gvir, tomorrow, when you're at your meeting, and you have with your diamonds, I'd love to come to visit you. I'd love to come visit you. So the man was very, very pleased. Oh, the Rebbe wants to come to see me? So he was getting ready to show his diamonds, and he placed them all nicely on the piece of velvet that he was putting. He placed all the diamonds nicely on the piece of velvet. And then the Rebbe came, and the Rebbe said, I'd like to see the diamonds. So he said, sure, Rebbe. So the Rebbe's looking at the diamonds, and he's marveling over the diamonds. And the man is very, very happy to see that the Rebbe is enjoying the diamonds. And the Rebbe tells him, I see this diamond over here. This diamond must be the most expensive diamond you have. And the man looks at the Rebbe and he smiles and he says, Rebbe, no. Actually, Rebbe, this is one of the cheapest diamonds I have here. And he says, okay. He looks at some more diamonds. And he looks at another one and he says to the Rebbe says to him, oh, this one must be the most expensive of all the diamonds. And the man looked at the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said to him, and he said to the Rebbe, Rebbe, I have to tell you, this is actually probably the cheapest diamond that I have here. And he says to the Rebbe, look, I'm not surprised. I spend my so many years studying diamonds, and I'm a maven. I'm an expert when it comes to diamonds. I'm not surprised that you don't know. So the Rebbe looks at the man, he says to him, you know what? You're a maven in diamonds, but I'm a maven in neshamas. I'm a maven in Jews. I understand Jews. You think you understand diamonds. I understand you. When you saw yesterday, when I let that other man in, and you were surprised why I let that man in before you. He's a very, very special neshama. He's a very special diamond. But you weren't able to tell that because you don't understand the neshamas. Torah says, you see, the guy and is having trouble. So the Yalkut Shemaini says, a person has to subdue himself. The Yalkut asks, if you have a friend who needs help, unloading, and an enemy who needs help loading, who comes first? How do you like that? Yeah, you have two guys, two people. There's two people in front of you. One guy you can't stand, and the other guy's your good friend. Who do you help first? The answer is, you have to help your enemy first. What's the reason? To subdue the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. It's more important to conquer your own hatred than it is to perform a standard of act of kindness. It's more important for us to do Tikkun Hamidos. Today, this week is the last week in the week of Shovavim. This is the time to do Tikkun Hamidos. This mitzvah is teaching us that you have to overcome what your feelings are. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Listen to this now. The emo with him rule, the Torah specifies that you must help him. The partnership. You are only required to help if the owner is also trying to help. If the enemy sits down and says, "Oh, it's your mitzvah, you do it," you're not obligated to do that. If he's working, then you have to help him. If he says, "It's a mitzvah for you to help me, I'll sit down and relax, you go load my animal." The mitzvah is designed to create an interaction between two people. In other words, if you're sitting there by yourself and I'm working, there's no interaction. But if we're both working together for a common goal, so then we have an interaction. And the Yalkut explains, this is a psychological transformation. By working together on the ropes and the boxes and whatever he's doing to load, the enemy thinks to himself, he actually cares about my success. The physical act of shared labor breaks the silence between the two of them. Most of the time, people don't like each other because they don't talk. If they talk it out, they'll see that they really like each other. The biggest problem is people don't talk. The Torah says if you see your enemy, there's a mitzvah, go help him. It's not a mitzvah if he doesn't want to help himself, if he's not going to help, because then there's no interaction. Now we understand why it's so crucial to have an interaction. Because then the two of them can realize, wow, they're very nice. They're very nice to each other. The Yalkut describes that this is psychological transformation and the summary. To turn the hated one into a loved one. I hate the person, now I love the person. To change the sinner into a hava. Change the hatred into love. And how do you do this? By a physical assistance in a moment of stress. Beautiful. Okay. Parshat Mishpatim itself is one of the richest portions in the Torah for the Midrash, as it transitions from the lofty heights of Har Sinai to the practical, often gritty detail of civil law. Right? Most of Bava Metzia, Baba Kama, is coming from this parsha. The laws that we have. The Midrash Rabbah on Mishpatim focuses heavily on the physical connection between the thunder and lightning and the 10 commandments and then the ordinary laws of damages of property. The Midrash begins by explaining why Mishpatim follows the revelation. It argues that just as a king's palace is guarded by armed soldiers, the Torah is guarded by its justice. If you have a king, there are soldiers surrounding the palace. A president, there are guards all around. Secret Service. The Torah says the mitzvos, the laws, are the protection of the Torah. So beautiful to see here. That's unbelievable. Without having civil laws, the level that we attain spiritually on Har Sinai will not stay, cannot survive in the world. The world, you need to do mitzvahs maisias. You need to do things physically. You have to pick up, to do a mitzvah, you have to put on the tefillin onto your arm, onto your head. You need to have tefillin. On Shabbos, you have to have food. You need to eat the challah. You drink the wine. Physical things. Physical. And the Midrash says something so beautiful. Listen to this. The Midrash explains that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu not just to teach the Torah, but arrange them like a Shulchan Aruch, like a beautifully set table, that everything's ready. You know how it's nice when you come to a dinner and all the salads and everything are on the table, and then all the food is all prepared. It's so nice. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, prepare the Torah that way, that everything's prepared, that everything looks beautiful, because it is beautiful. And that's what the Shulchan Aruch is. Here's an interesting thing. The Torah says about the Eved Ivri, right? The Jewish slave. If there was a Jewish slave, if there was a Jew that for whatever reason it was, he got in trouble, whether he needed to or he again, like we were learning about the imagination, right? Lesson 7. His imagination told him, well, if I take this from this person, he doesn't really need it. Right? He doesn't really need it. Remember when we were kids, they used to read us the story Robin Hood, right? Robin Hood. Remember that story, Robin Hood? You take from the rich and give to the poor. And he was considered a saint. Right? He was a great guy. He robbed from the rich. They didn't need it anyway. That's a lie. The Torah tells us everything. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours. And what I cannot take what's yours and you can't take what's mine. But this person got carried away with his imagination. And he wound up taking something that he shouldn't have taken. So the Torah says, what do? The person gets sold. He gets sold to an Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave. But Chazal teach us really when a person buys a Jewish slave, the master is actually buying himself a master. Why? Because in the house, if there's only one pillow, the Eved Ivri gets the pillow. If there are two pillows, and one's a better pillow than the other, the Eved Ivri gets the better one. If there are two blankets or two beds, he gets the better one. Always gets a better one. So they say that really the master bought a master for himself. So now, and the master is able to give to the Eved Ivri a Shifcha Kananis, a lady that's not a Jewish lady, as a wife while he's his slave. And the purpose is so that way they would have children, and those children would wind up being slaves. The Eved Ivri goes free after 6 years. On the 7th year, he goes free. On the year of Yovel, he goes free. Even if this Eved Ivri, the master gave him a wife, and he likes the lady, and he has children. Oh, my kids are so sweet. I don't want to leave them. Oh, and my master, he's so nice to me. Look how nice to me he is. He gives me better food than he eats. He gives me a better place to live than he lives. He takes care of me. If I go back home, what's my wife going to give me? Besides maybe a heartache, right? That was a joke. Okay? So he says, I want to stay. So the Torah says, take this Eved Ivri to the doorpost. Take him to the doorpost and make a hole in his ear on the doorpost of the door. And why is that? The Midrash famously notes that the ear is pierced because it's the same ear that heard on Har Sinai. For unto me, the children of Klal Yisrael are my servants, Hashem said. Yet the person went and acquired a human master for himself. The Alkut Shemaini Act, as an encyclopedia pulling from various Talmud and lost Midrash, it's a coverage of Mishpatim in vast, focusing on the cosmic implications of justice. Justice and the divine throne. The Kisei HaKavod. The Alkut emphasizes that whenever a judge renders a true judgment, it is as if they became a partner with Hashem in creation. How beautiful is that, right? On the opposite side, perverting judgment pushes the Shekhinah out of the world. A significant portion of the Yalkut on this parsha deals with the end of the portion, describing the vision. He describes a vision that there's a sapphire pavement under Hashem's feet. Whatever that means, again, it's nothing physical. It suggests this is the reminder of the bricks that Klal Yisrael made in Mitzrayim, showing that Hashem suffered alongside them. It provides an extensive homily of the social cork and the convert, the widow, the orphan, and the poor, warning that Hashem is in their direct advocate. Hashem says, be very careful when it comes to an ani, when it comes to an almana, a widow, when it comes to a yasam, an orphan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I am their direct advocate. The Me'am Loyes is a fascinating teaching by Rabbi Yaakov Kuli of Ladino. He wrote it in the 18th century. The Me'am Loyes explains that these laws aren't just for a functioning society. They are the refinement of our neshama. The laws help refine our neshamas. For example, the law of returning a lost object is meant to uproot selfishness. Person finds on the street, he finds a nice watch, he finds a nice whatever, a nice object. I want to keep that. I like that. Torah says, no. Give that back. Give that back. There's a mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. Return the object. Return the object. Because the person has selfishness. And you can uproot selfishness by giving things back. Unbelievable. He provides detailed case studies based on the Midrash to show how one should behave in business, emphasizing that being strictly legal isn't enough. You hear that? Being strictly legal is not enough. One must go lefi mishuras hadin. He must go above the letter of the law. Mishpatim contains 53 mitzvos, 23 positive and 30 negative commandments of the 613. I'm going to go through the list. I prepared a list. And let's go over the list for a few minutes and see how much we can accomplish. So the first mitzvah, which is actually number 42, is the Eved Ivri, the laws of the Hebrew slave, like we spoke about. Mitzvah 43 is talking about a person can betroth a girl that's a Hebrew maidservant. If there's a Hebrew maidservant, she could be betrothed. And then there's another mitzvah of Pidyon Ema Evriya, the duty to redeem a Hebrew maidservant. The mitzvah 45 is Leitimka La'am Nochri. She can't be sold to a Gentile. And then the Torah talks about She'era Kesusa V'Ainasa Layigra, that one is not allowed to withhold food, clothing, or marital rights from his wife. Mitzvah in the Torah. Mitzvah in the Torah. To be with one's wife when it's when it's proper. Mitzvah in the Torah to buy a woman, your wife, clothing, to give her food. This is a mitzvah in the Torah. Then the Torah has the mitzvah of the Meses Bezdin B'Sayev. If a person commits a crime, a capital crime, and he has to be put to death, the court executes the person with the sword. Then the Torah goes on to mitzvah 48, Maka Aviv V'imai. A person is not allowed to hit their mother or father. Right? That's a mitzvah in the Torah. Yes, a person will say, oh, well, how would I wouldn't want to hit my mother and father? Yeah, you don't want to hit your mother and father, not because it's not nice to do that. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. Then mitzvah 49, we have the dinei knasais. If a person does something wrong and he gets a fine and penalties for bodily injury. Then the Torah talks about Mises Bezdin Beskila. If a person does something wrong, a capital crime, and he has to be punished with stoning skila. Mitzvah 51. Isser hana mishor haniska. Another mitzvah is like this. If there's an animal that caused damage, there's an animal that what do you call it? You're not allowed to eat the meat or benefit from the meat of a stone ox. Here we go. You had a stone ox. The ox was stoned because it gored, or whatever the case was. You're not allowed to eat that meat. Then the Torah says, what about Nezike bar? Person makes there's a street, and the guy decides to drill dig a hole in the middle of the street. A guy falls into the hole. He's chayav for that. You're not allowed to do that. Then the Torah talks about Nezike regel v'shein, the liability for an animal consuming or trampling a neighbor's crop. Then we talk about Nezike eish, habar, liable for damage of fire. Someone does something negligent on their property, that the wind comes and blows the fire into another property, he's chayiv on that. Then the Torah talks about a Sheleimah chinam. Hey, I have this thing, can you watch this for me? Can you watch this thing for me? But I don't pay you to watch it. That's called a Sheleimah chinam. For free. Then the Torah has the laws of a shoyel, a borrower. Then the Torah says 59, Sheleimah Sachar. Right? We said there's laws for there's laws of a person that watches for free a Sheleimah chinam, but there's also laws for a person that's paid to watch, and a renter. Then we have the dinim lesson number 60, dinim mefata, the obligation of a man who seduces an unmarried woman. Then the Torah says, machashefa loy tichya, that's 61, a witch, a sorcerer, you don't let that person live. That's mitzvah. And the next mitzvah 62 is Ainas Devorim Beger. A person is not allowed to taunt or verbally wrong a convert. 64. Loi Tainin Almana V'Yosam. Do not inflict pain to the widow or the orphan. Number 65. Halvos Chein La'ani. The positive commandment to lend money to the poor. That's actually probably the greatest mitzvah that you have. To lend money to somebody. Where the person doesn't feel indebted like you gave him something. Like you just had to give him something. But the person feels like, wow, he loaned me money. You trusted in me. It's a beautiful mitzvah to loan money. Especially interest-free. A person should not demand payment from a debtor who is unable to pay. If you loan money to somebody and you know that something happened and he doesn't have the money, it's a mitzvah not to bother the person at that time. Not to say that the loan is forgiven, but give the guy a little time. And then lesson 60, in the mitzvah 67, Issa Ribis. If you loan money, you're not allowed to take interest. And then 68 is Lai Tekala Lalayim. You're not allowed to curse a judge. And then the Torah has 69, Birchas Hashem, Gidaf, the prohibition against blaspheming, against cursing Hashem's name. Lo tikalo nasi. A person is not allowed to curse the king or the nasi. Lo ta'achet trumas and do not delay or change the order of the truma ma'aser, the tithes and the offerings. Then the Torah has 73. Nevelu treifa. Do not eat treif. Meat torn from or terminally ill animal. Lo yisisa shema shav. Don't accept or repeat a false report, slander. 75. Not to accept testimony from a wicked person. Number 76. Rabim larois. Do not follow after the majority to pervert judgment in a capital case. All these are beautiful mitzvahs in the parsha, this week's parsha. Next one, 77. Laitana al riv linatois. A judge who argued for acquittal may not later argue for his conviction. The next one is 78. Acharei rabim lahatois, to follow the majority in court's ruling. 79. V'dal lo yitahad beriboy. Not to favor a poor person in judgment out of pity. These are all mitzvahs. It's amazing. These are mitzvahs d'oraisa in the parsha. And then mitzvah 80. Prika. Azay tazay v'imay. When you have your animal, when you have the animal of your friend is in trouble, you go help him, like we said, because that brings people together. It turns anger, it turns hatred into love. And loisate mishpat. What does that mean? Not to pervert judgment for a sinner needy in mitzvahs. If a person is a court case between two people, don't say, "Well, this guy's the Russia, so therefore I'm gonna be able to judge against him." No, you're not allowed to do that. And then mitzvah 82, midvasheket tircha. Stay far from anything that's false or deceptive. And then we have the mitzvahs of Shemitah, Shabbos, and the Yomim Tovim. Einos geba mishpat, not to mistreat or oppress a convert in judgment either. Shemitah's karkias, the Shemitah, right? In the 7th year, the land has to lay fallow. Shvisa Shabbos, the rest on Shabbos. Mitzvah 86. Lois tizkeru shem elayim acherim, not to swear, mention the name of any false idol or false gods. Loila hadach yisrael avodah zarah, and don't lead Jews astray to do idolatry, chas v'sholem. And then we have the mitzvah of the shalosh regalim, so beautiful, to celebrate the 3 times we had the pilgrimage to Yerushalayim. And then we have tishchat al chometz dam mizbechi, not to offer the carbon pesach while owning bread. Lo yolin chelev chagai. 91. Don't leave the fat of the sacrifices overnight. And then the final mitzvahs in the parsha are 92 to 94, Bikurim. On Shavuos, we would bring the Bikurim, the first fruits. We learned so much about that. How beautiful the first fruits were. When they brought those first fruits of the Zion, of the 7 species of Eretz Yisrael. How there was such a simcha when they would come and bring those fruits in the basket to Yerushalayim. And then the Torah tells us the mitzvah of not eat basar b'chalav, not to cook meat with milk. And the last mitzvah, 94, is loi lichrais bris l'shiva amim, We can't make a treaty with the 7 nations that are in Israel. There's no treaty made with them. Here you have it. These are the mitzvahs in the parsha. I mean, it's such a beautiful thing. It took me a while to compile the list, to get all these mitzvahs together that you actually, lemaisa, that you get out of the parsha. And it's just so beautiful to be able to, we have also, this week is Parsha Shkolim. What was the whole mitzvah of Shkolim? What is the whole idea of Shkolim? Shkolim was used for the Bedek Abayis. Every Jew had to bring a machzas a shekel. Every Jew, every year, had to contribute a machzas a shekel. They used that for the Beis HaMikdash. They used that for the communal sacrifices. Everybody had to give that. And we all want to feel part of Klal Yisrael. It's a beautiful mitzvah to give the machzas a shekel. And that's why we read about it. And don't forget, this week we're also going to have this Shabbos, Chodesh. We're going to be Mevorach, Birchas HaChodesh, of Chodesh Adar. Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. And we learned just to tie the lesson together. What is the greatest simcha a person can do? When he takes care of his medama. When a person straightens out his medama. When he straightens out his imagination that's drawing him away from the Rabbeinu Shalom, and he comes closer to Hashem. How do you do that? Like we said, lesson 10, by a mitigating judgment. How do you do that? By clapping, putting the left hand over the right hand. Putting the left hand over the right hand, the din over the chesed. By lifting the feet off the ground. And you lift yourself away from the worldly things of this world. That's what you do when you lift yourself up. And with that, I want to wish everyone a beautiful Shabbos. Thank you for joining. And everyone that's going to listen, all the people that are listening, and they listen and they send me all the beautiful messages. I appreciate it so much. The chizuk is amazing. So everyone should have a wonderful Shabbos. Kol Tov, thank you for joining.